Hey, you gorgeous humans. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm Catherine Spiller. I'm an ICPKP qualified kinesiologist, and I have until recently been a barista and working out in the community, which has been a really interesting life transition back into professional, which I'm really excited for, honestly. And in this episode, what I'm wanting to talk about is coercion, but self-coercion. When we come back to it, the only person we have ever had control over is ourselves. And so in this, I just want to explore the concept behind using, manipulating wills. And when we come down to our core relationship, which is our relationship to ourselves, we start to see some of the byproducts of the coercion that we've experienced, right? So the belief systems and things like this. One way that I like to look at it is that we've got a yin aspect and a yang aspect, masculine and feminine qualities, if you will. That seems to be the way that a lot of people like to describe it. But they're just, in Hermetics, we've got the law of polarity. In Christianity, we've got good versus evil, and a lot of this dualistic thinking is fortified by different belief systems. When we can, and it's helpful to be able to decipher and some of the experiences that we have by using some of these languages or context for understanding the human experience. And one of the reasons why I like the idea of yin and yang is it doesn't place gender or stereotypical gender roles on either of the energies. One is more submissive usually than the other. But what we find when we get stuck in prioritizing one over the other, and one could be, feeling more victimized than an abusive. And when we come into this relationship with ourselves, we start to see, the patterns of relationships that we have with other people on the outside of us. We actually start to see that within the way that we relate to our own selves. And this is where some of that deep work goes in. And I'd love to do some images up of this, but basically, if you can imagine, if you've seen that video, that meme going around of the little boy crying with the boot on his head, and then it zoomed out and he's laughing with the boot on his head, but he's the one holding the boot on his head to describe a spiritual awakening. So if you can imagine that, the coercion would be at the point before you realize that you're doing it to yourself, when you're still in pain and you know that it's not anyone else's necessarily but yours to deal with and learn now. This is when pain becomes our teacher, and we surrender to the pain that we have, and we also go to our tolerance. I also now know that I cannot tolerate this further. So we've reached an edge of learning, and within this edge of learning, we are able to access deeper capacity, but it feels like going backwards sometimes. We meet a patch of resistance as we go through our healing journey, through our learning journey. There's resistance there, and the way that we approach that resistance is also reflective of what we tolerate in relationships with others. It starts coming up with ourselves. So we might go, if you suffered PTSD, you could get to a point where you go, I've created so much safety around me that now I'm exhausted and I can't seem to motivate myself to do anything. And if that's where you're at, then breathe deep. It's okay. This is just another edge. Oh, something funny happened there. This is just another edge of learning. This is just another, like an upper level limit for me to move through. And sometimes it's as simple as stopping to see what the underlying self-talk is and just holding yourself through feeling. So if you can imagine, right, you've got the yin and the yang, and we can say the male and the female if we wanted to, the yin being the female, the yang being the male. And so those characteristics are like, sometimes the yin has so much feeling and it won't progress. You won't be able to move through until you hold your yin energy, and everyone has both, male, female, doesn't matter. Everyone has both. So if you are able to hold space within your physical body and your presence for the feeling, for the sensation of the yin, of that information that's trying to come through, right? And energy is linked to instinct. So these feelings, these emotions, the energy emotions, they're linked to our physical instincts. And so dealing with anxiety and a lot of those hypersensory feelings, you know, it's so easy to disregard them and avoid them with the yarn and go, no, power through. It's all about mindset. It's all about this. And then disregard and abandon the feeling aspect, which is actually essential for grounding, because the two need to be like married, but not necessarily married, integrated. They need to be able to find that space of acceptance of both sides as equal in order for the flow or the chi to resonate within the being, right? In order for you to create a conscious path forward with alignment to your own integrity. Some aspects of our own experience are simpler and gentler, and they're right under our nose. But because we don't slow down to go through the tiny little steps of it, then we start to miss it because we like zoom out. We should be looking like this, but I've got these little things going on and it's so silly. If I could just do this, if I could just do this, and then we can start to hear the language of our own coercion. And that's where we come back even more into our center. And we're like, okay, if we're too much in our yin, our whole flow cycle, if you can imagine the yin and the yang creates, you know, the Tao Te Ching. If you see, you know, the town and country symbol, it creates that as a flow through life. The dark in the light and the light in the dark, the yin and the yang and the yang and the yin. If we're too focused within the masculine, within our yang, then we're going to stagnate into some of our magic. Like we're going to be focusing heavily on physical doing, physical being, and what the mindsets are without integrating with the subtle energies of intuition, of feeling, of the depth of data that's actually involved in feeling, and then being able to unite the two in a shared vision moving forward. And that comes when we we pause straight up. And this is the first principle of spiritual sovereignty, is to pause. And we take assessment, okay, what is going on with me? What feeling is there? It's not going to be dramatic. Why is it not going to be dramatic? Because you've learned a lot through drama, and the other end of the spectrum is to learn without drama. So it's to come to a place of isness without perpetuating chaos, because we're conscious enough to understand that there's an aspect within us that needs to be felt. So we give it a stage to feel it, and we don't judge it. We just allow ourselves to feel it. And it literally feels like a wholeness within the heart, almost like a hug. When we start to allow our conscious mind to hold space for our feelings without avoiding them, without running away from them, without getting distracted, acknowledging that they're there because they're there. Let's not go Delulu on ourselves again and gaslight ourselves out of our own experience. When we allow for that to be there and we pause the pursuit of next, the invisible timeline that we're holding ourselves to, when we allow ourselves to receive what is already there in the ether, if you consider the principles of quantum mechanics, everything is connected. Time is a belief system. We interact with it according to our belief systems. And so if you can just pause, if you can slow down, you will find that you will have more time for all of the things that are the most important and essential for you and your journey. So pause. See what it is that the aspects of you are needing on a deeper level, right? What aspects of polarity are you being called to integrate? One thing that I like to do is tap my thymus, which is just if you feel where your sternum kind of has an apex just under your clavicle. And just tap on that. That helps to release and stabilize. It's like part of the immune system, hormonal systems. It's an amazing gland. And it's where a lot of our feelings start to come from. If we can pause and come into our body and start to witness the yin aspects of us and the yang aspects of us and how one might be dominating another. And, you know, because our experience, our life is a microcosm of the universe. That's one of the principles of traditional Chinese medicine, is that within our physical experience, it's fractaled from the universal experience, which is why there's so much information within the one individual's experience. And when we come to this place of not forcing ourselves like we wouldn't force our children, we interact differently with our children, and we also interact differently with ourselves. And the narrative of the people who might have been coercively abusing us changes because we start to see our own involvement in it. We can start to see how we've participated in it. The more ownership that you have over it, perhaps the less angry you get. And that's likely spiraled because more information comes with greater responsibility. And that's the truth of it. And particularly when you're reintegrating your inner child, your inner teenager, in order to step into the abundance of your like adult, like the you that you're desiring to be right now. As we come back through that, there's like some serious resistance to responsibility. And that was healthy, like speaking personally. So my resistance was to holding space for other people in a practical, a clinical kind of a way, professional way as a kinesiologist. Resistance around that this last year, particularly since I guess this last year I wanted my healing capacity for me the most. And so being a barista played into that. There was a lack of responsibility. I will make your coffee and send you on your way. And that, I believe, was a result of empathy burnout, of being so focused on everyone else's things. And after the relationship ended this time last year, or just over a year ago, my last relationship, I've been like celibate for a year, and I'm like so proud of myself, like breaking the addiction to sex and intimacy and having to have that hit, and also the gaze of another human onto me, like being able to sit with myself through the times where I would have labeled it lonely and being so relieved that it's just me there, that I don't have any obligation over anyone else. And yes, I still got teenage sons at home, But the relationship with them is so much simpler now than it used to be, because I've been unlearning these coercive things. I've been forcing them to do things less, inviting them into cohabitation and what that looks like, with dividing chores and holding each other accountable for our impact in our living space, the shared living spaces, and establishing just different boundaries for the running of a household, which they're going to need to participate in no matter where they live or who they live with. So that's watermelon and mint drink. Oh my gosh. So living through this experience and being employed and then moving out of employment and all this time deconstructing different things and going, oh my gosh, I would so much rather invest my time, energy, and talents into, and concentration and focus into, serving my community as a kinesiologist than as a barista. And so that's really the motivation behind getting back into it. And also it's about not coercing myself into a certain timeline, which is why it had to feel so chosen, and not out of obligation or duty, like, oh no, so many people need you right now, they need the healing. And that may be true. And also, I choose it. Like, I choose it. And so because I have chosen it, there's a different energy there. It's not obligation. It's submission. It's me surrendering to the parts of me that are also like do light up by the things that I do. And when I am in my workflow, I am literally on top of the world. When I'm running courses and helping people to empower themselves through coercive relationships, you know, through just gentler boundary setting, through how to make decisions, teaching them what yes and no feels like in their bodies so they're able to live their yes and no simpler and gentler without fear and anxiety. That is what lights me up in this world. Oh my goodness. And being able to give those things to myself this year has been just so... There's definitely been more of a break from empathy this year, and that feels good because I can see where my energy was getting leaked and spent in places that weren't my highest good. And because they're not in my highest good, they're also not in other people's highest good. Because whatever is for my highest good will also benefit other people as well. All inclusive, because infinite possibilities exist. Infinite possibilities exist, which means there's a possibility that exists that everyone has the highest good that happens to them. There's a possibility that exists, and I choose to dwell in those possibilities. And I don't need this to be a really long episode. I did, though, just want to continue on. The last episode with T, I felt was so beautiful, and we didn't even nearly cover all the things that I wanted to cover. But in this one, I really did want to just focus on our ability to relate to ourselves. The way that we perpetuate, coerce within our own world by coercing ourselves and holding this picture of perfection and expecting ourselves, like, just because we see more, because we have these insights of things that need to change, we feel the anxiety of not changing them all straight away. You know, it's like, yes, we've got cling wrap and we've also got this wax paper, you know, stuff, beeswax paper that we can use instead of cling wrap. And sometimes we just use the cling wrap and we can guilt ourselves and shame ourselves until we realize we're learning and evolving. All things in their time and ways, like times and seasons. We can accept ourselves through our growth seasons, and it actually helps us to grow faster. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. We integrate these new things little bit by little bit, and then they grow, they build on themselves. So if you're in a place where you are struggling with self-compassion because you are bullying yourself, then I've actually released a free Falling in Love with Self course. It's on my YouTube on a playlist. There's 3 videos there. I do have PDF workbooks, but I'm trying to figure out how to actually get them onto the internet so they can be downloaded and used. But for now, just send me an email or message me on Instagram at I am Catherine Spiller, and just ask me for the link, and I'll send you the link to them. So that is something, a place to start. It is a basic place to start. And keep an eye out for January 2025, because I'm going to be releasing a whole ton of new content around self-love. Self-love is the place where we start to gain our energy back. It's where we start to welcome ourselves back into our lives when we feel like we've had no control. It's the place to start. And just know so deeply within yourself that you have this. You have your answers. It's within your body. It's within your heart. And that as you are gentler and kinder with yourself, you will start to gain access to the parts of yourself that you once denied. And you will have access to the capacity as you build it through your life. And you can also rely that there will be miracles that show up. It's not all going to be from your sweat and effort. As you allow yourself to give and receive, you will receive absolute abundance, which is our birthright. You'll be in a place of joy because you'll know that you're on your own path. And then that will bring peace enough to sleep well at night. I have so much faith and belief in you. I'm now open for one-on-one sessions, consulting sessions with kinesiology, as well as, working through lunar cycles in order to move through transformative times. I'm also going to be releasing Spiritual Sovereignty in February again, and that's going to have a different interface, which I'm working on currently and I'm very excited about. So that's even deeper diving into reprogramming our subconscious mind, reprogramming our conscious mind, and aligning with the superconscious mind. I'm really excited for the coming year, and I'm so excited to be back in a place as a kinesiologist and sharing my insights into how to create life homeostasis through self-love and attuning to our own pace, the pace of the nature within us. I have so much love for you, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you.